Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Wednesday video where I answer your questions. Got some pretty cool questions this week. Let's get right into it. The first question comes from Troy Evans. I have two questions. What's the name of the paper that CGC puts inside the comic before they slab it to preserve it? Can it be bought in bulk? Well, yes. It can be bought in bulk, and it's called archival paper. And I actually have some. I bought it. So actually, I never used it though. Because when I when I got it, I realized that there was a mistake that I made. So yes, you can buy it in bulk. So this is what it looks like when you buy it in bulk. Do not buy it in bulk. Don't buy it in bulk the way I did, I should say. So the way it works is, if you want to use this, it basically will absorb like the acids from the comic book paper, so that it will basically protect the paper from, the breakdown that happens over time. Well, if you buy it this way, which is the wrong way, I have to say, you have to cut it to size. So that is really annoying. I think you can buy it also in the actual comic book size, already pre-cut version. It's more expensive. Like, this was really cheap, but it'll save you so much more time. So don't buy it like this way. So you can buy it. You can buy it in bulk. It costs you about $10, and it will give you like maybe 50 sheets or whatever. It's not that expensive. I think I paid $5 for this, but it's annoying, so I didn't bother using it. I really was like, shoot, this is like, I think I would have to cut it in half and then put it inside the comics. But it was just too much work. I didn't want to do it. So I ended up just keeping it and haven't used it. But it is a good idea to put this inside. Generally, you put it in behind the cover and behind like the cover in the front and the cover in the back. And that usually protects your comic. So this is the paper that they use. Okay, and it's called archival paper. And you just Google it, you'll find lots of it. Or search on eBay, you'll find lots of it. Do you use a UV light to detect color touch on Golden Age comics? From your experience, is color touch rampant on Golden Age comics? Yes, and yes. So it is rampant. And I'll show you the light that I use. So it's this one. This is the name. It's like, it was $10, so it was really, really inexpensive. I thought it was great. It has like multiple settings. You can do that. You can do that. You can do strobe light. all the people like having spasms after watching this video. So wait, one sec here. I want to make sure I get the right light for you. One sec. Where's the UV? Okay, wait, the strobe. There we go. So this is the, oh my goodness, my hand really dirty. Okay. Now, what's going on with my hand? Okay, so this is the light that I use, and I'll give you an example. So this comic has color touch. In the dark, you don't do this in the light. You can go like this, and you can see what'll happen is the color will turn purple where there's color touch. I don't really see it without turning off the light. So yeah, there's some color touch in here. I can barely see it even in the light. But one thing that I want to talk about with this question, because it's a great question actually, because I actually grabbed a bunch of slabs, and this is just a bunch of slabs that are all restored out of my collection that all have either color touch or some kind of restoration. And we're going to look at what are the common types of restoration in the Golden Age. And I'm going to get into why we see those types of restoration. In some books, first of all, to preference this, in some books from the Golden Age, you will see half of the census being restored. And there's a common theme for which books have really high census counts of restored copies. And those books are generally the most expensive ones. And it's not that, people fiddled with certain books more and try to be deceptive more with those books. It was the idea that back in the day, restoration was not considered a bad thing. It was actually considered a good thing, and you would get your books professionally restored. So you'll see, like, even on this comic I'm about to show you, it has slight A1 restoration. Well, A is professional restoration. 1 is very minor. Well, I'll give you, so this is an example of professional restoration. Okay, A1, 8.0. So when you get restoration on a high-grade comic like this, it kills the value. It just kills it. And even though it's professional restoration, it kills the value. Now, I don't agree with that in terms of what I think that the comic should be worth, but that is the case. And this is why I like picking up restored books, because you can pick them up for next to nothing compared to the unrestored versions of the comics. So let's look into what this one has in terms of restoration. Well, this one has a small amount of color touch on cover, piece added to cover, and bottom edge of cover trimmed. Okay, so some of the most common things that you'll see in Golden Age restoration are color touch, trimming. So generally with older books, you'll see that they get kind of frayed around the edges. And it was just a thing to make it look better, they would trim that. And it would be like, it wouldn't affect the graphic on the comic at all. It would generally just clean up the edges. They'd probably take off 1 millimeter or something like that. Very little removed from the book. Another thing they would do is what's called tear seals, where you'll have like some tearing coming in, and generally a tear, if you use a little bit of glue, you can fix that and remove that tear or prevent that tear from growing. And actually, tear seals is a way of protecting your books, because tear over time will grow, and it can rip right through the cover over time, like whatever number of years. But the point is, tear seals is a way of protecting the book. Another thing that you'll see sometimes in the Golden Age is staples replaced. That's very common with restoration, because staples over time will rust, especially the older style staples, they rust. So people, in order to protect the comics, they would remove the staples and replace them. So those are very common forms of restoration. So this is an example. So this is example number 1. I'm going to show you a bunch. So that's example number 1. Example number 2 is another high-grade comic, my Bullet Man number 2, restored again. And this one is a B1. So B1 means semi-professional, minor restoration. And the restoration includes tear seal to cover. So this is one of those situations where sometimes you'll get like maybe splits happening along the, especially along the spine. You can get tears, and then what they'll do is they'll fix that by using either glue or something, or tape or whatever. And sometimes that will make the cover adhere to the actual page beneath it. And so that's what they're saying right there. But yeah, tear seal to cover. So yeah, so that's another example. No, that one didn't have any color touch, just had the tear seal. Okay. Then we have another semi-high grade. This one's semi-high grade. It's not super high grade, but this is my PEP 93, and it has C1. Now C is amateur restoration, and 1 is minor. So amateur, minor restoration. So this one has restoration includes a small amount of color touch on cover. If we use our light again, let's see if we can get it to go here. Oh yeah, let's see if we can sort of see it. I don't know if we'll be able to see it. Usually when people do color touch, they do it in the darker colors. If it's a black cover or has some dark colors or green, I've seen a lot in green covers, they'll do some color touch. I think I'm actually seeing it in this green down here. There's some color touch right there, I believe. So it's actually just a small spot of color touch. I don't even know why they bothered, but they did, and it greatly impacts the value of the book, and but it doesn't impact the grade because it presents well, but it does impact the value. Now, the interesting thing about it is you can actually remove color touch sometimes. There's two ways of removing it. Sometimes if it's done with water-soluble paints, you can actually literally soak it in a bath and those paints will disappear. The other thing that they sometimes do when it's like done, usually amateur restoration, what they'll do is they will actually remove the section that has the color touch. They'll actually cut it out. There'll be like a big hole where there was color touch. And generally they do that, especially when the color touch bleeds through the cover. And that happens often with color touch, especially when it's done with markers or something like that, where it just seeps right through the cover. And I've seen it actually be so soaked into the cover that it actually goes into the first page of the comic. So that's very common. But this is a small amount of color touch. So it gives you a sense of how common it is. We got another one. This is these were just random too, by the way. I just picked random ones. I was looking around. Oh, those are all restored. I'll pick those ones. This is my Brenda Starr, another restored book. This is C1 again, so amateur minor restoration. And the color touch, restoration includes small amount of color touch on cover. Spine split sealed. So again, as I was saying, spine splits will happen generally at the bottoms or around the staples. That's really common, where you'll get like kind of it splitting, the spine will split, and then you can glue it or do whatever, put some tape on it or whatever to try to seal it. So this one again, small amount of color touch and spine splits. Now again, spine splits, similar to tears, will get bigger over time if nothing is done about it. So some of this restoration actually is to protect the comic. Now this next one is another C1 amateur restoration. This is my Mystic Comics #1. And this one has actually, as I said, C1, so minor restoration. And what does it include? Small amount of color touch on cover, small amount of glue on cover, tape on cover, and interior cover. Now the funny thing is, even though tape is not considered restoration, believe it or not, that's the weird thing. Tape is not considered restoration. It is denoted if there is other restoration. And actually it's denoted even if there isn't. You can still see, you'll get blue labels where it says tape on cover. So it's one of those weird things. But yeah, so this is another restored book. Okay. And here's an example of a book that you would see very commonly restored. And I see this one all the time. When it comes up at auction, it's usually restored. And this is my Detective 38. And this one is restored. And it's extensive. Now, I was saying that there's a slight, moderate, and extensive. And then there's sort of crossovers between the two. So you can get slight moderate, which is kind of a lower amount. Then you get moderate. Then you can get slight, moderate, extensive, and then you can get extensive. Well, this is extensive. So it's A5. Now, A, again, represents that it is professional restoration. And 5 is that it is extensive. It is extensive. So let's read what this one had done to it. Color touch, pieces added, tear seals, cover cleaned, and reinforced. So probably the biggest restoration that was done to this book was actually the cover being cleaned. And generally the reason I say that is the biggest of the restorations is that it's a complete, there's no part of the comic that hasn't been touched by the cover cleaning. Generally what they would do is they would use like either water with vinegar or some kind of like something that would just help clean the comic, remove some of the oils that might be on the comic or some of the dirt that's on the comic, and it would just give it a much brighter thing. Sometimes they would use chemicals that will actually lighten the book as well. They use that sometimes inside the pages where they can take a page that's like off-white and make it white, you know, give it a bit more life. So this one is off-white pages. So it might be that the whole, not just the cover cleaned, but yeah, actually this one's just cover clean, but sometimes they'll actually bleach the pages basically. But this is just cover cleaned. With that being said, that is very common for this kind of book, because you want to make it, if you get an expensive book like this, you want to make it present well. And it's not that people are trying to be deceptive. It's generally they'll go into it with a kind of beaten up looking book. It's an expensive key, first appearance of Robin, for example, and they want to make it look good. So they would get a professional to do restoration on it. But things changed after CGC started introducing the label of restoration. So just something to be aware of. And I got one more book, restored book. I just want to drive this home about restoration, but here's my last one. It's another Batman. This one is Slight C1. So you'll see that a big difference, again, with some of these books. The ones that have generally the C1 rather than the A's are the cheaper books. This is not as expensive as the Detective 38. So generally, if you're going to get a book, you know, it's been deliberate that they're getting restored, because they know that they want this book to present well. This one is amateur. Probably somebody is like, oh, I don't like the way the spine ticks and the black are showing. Just put in some marker or something like that. Let's see what it is. Okay, restoration includes small amount of color touch on cover. I was talking about that. Actually, I think I can even see. Oh yeah, even actually this one, even in the even with just like 1 second, let me put it on the right light. Bear with me. Come on, light. You know you want. Oh, I think I clicked by it. 1 second. It's like I gotta click about 20 times to get the right light. There we go. I think you can see the color touch right there. I'm not sure if you can see it. I'm trying to make it, you might not be able to see it. I could see it. I thought, oh wow, I can see it even with the lights on, which normally you shouldn't be able to see. But it's right in here, the color touch. And, you know, it's minor. You could tell it was like just a spine crease that they didn't like, and they try to put in some black to hide it. But this one has all edges trimmed, which is the big thing. And again, sometimes with these older comics, what you'll get is what's called overhang, where the cover will actually kind of go beyond the length of the pages, and you'll get sort of fraying as a result along the cover's edge. So it's another reason why people would get those trimmed. And generally, it doesn't really impact the comic, but it is considered restoration. So yeah, so as I said, that's more likely to happen with the books where it's not necessarily a valuable book, and they're more likely to do it amateur-wise. You know, you wouldn't pay somebody to do restoration if it's not an expensive book. So that's the interesting thing about this. So it's just something to be aware of. You know, that's why you'll see on the more expensive books, it's A, where somebody's actually paid to get that book restored. And that's why I'm trying to say it's not a deceptive thing. It's not that they were trying to like, oh, let's sneak in that this book is, you know, a mint copy when it's really been modified to look like a mint copy. It's more that they want to make the book present well because this is a book that they've invested money in. So just something to be aware of. Okay. Next name, I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right, but it looks like B4R, so B4 ON5A84N. What a weird name. Yeah. So hi, Alan. Do you have any hardcover slipcase EC Comics library? No. Any of those? I do not have any of those, but I do. The closest thing I have to like an anthology book for EC is this one. This is Haunt of Fear, the EC Archives. So it's a pretty cool book. It's a great way to read if you want to read the EC books. These trade paperbacks kind of come in handy. So I found that at a flea market. So I was like, oh, pick that up. It's pretty cool. But I don't have any of the hardcover ones. M. LeBlond wrote, "Hi, Alan. I recently bought a few issues of Sergeant Fury, those great Stranko covers. They are in quite good condition, but someone has covered the small price box with ink pen. There are a few other minor flaws, but they look, other than that minor flaw, they look great. How hard do you think CGC would punish that in terms of grade? I've also noticed you buy quite a lot of books with markings on them. Do they bother you, or do you get desensitized after a while?" They do bother me. I don't like writing on comics. I actually try to get as clean of a cover as possible. But sometimes when you're dealing with books that are super, super rare, you don't really get much choice. You get what you get sometimes. And I'll give you an example of that. Here's one that you can see that somebody put marker on it. I think what it was actually was somebody had like stamped, like some company had stamped the book, and then the person didn't like the fact that it was stamped, and they tried to erase it or something, and you get this weird smudge mark, which is just even worse, right? So this got like a 5.0, and it's actually a pretty nice presenting book. What I've generally seen with ones where there's marker on it, depends on how extensive it is, but as long as the rest of the book presents really, really sharply, I've seen 8.0s, even 9.0s. Very rare. That's very rare. The book has to be really, really crisp and solid, but I've heard that they can actually grade right up to 9.4. They won't go higher than that, but up to a 9.4. Generally, I think, like, I had a book where literally it was like a flawless book. It was perfect. It was a beautiful copy. But some idiot put a price sticker on it, and I removed the price sticker. But when the price sticker was removed, it removed a bit of the gloss and the color from where underneath that sticker was. And that book got an 8.0. So I would say that it's kind of in a similar kind of situation where you have to have a really nice presenting copy, and then it'll kind of grade out a little worse than it would have if it didn't have that flaw. But still, it can grade up to, as I said, as high as a 9.4, but probably more like in that 8.0 range would be my guess. Really depends on the overall quality of the book, though. Okay, K. Munin wrote, "Good to hear that you still have a comic store nearby. Are there any comic book characters that you feel are underutilized or underappreciated? What's your opinion? In your opinion, what is the best story arc in any comic series?" There's actually two that I can think of that are really awesome. One would be V for Vendetta, and the other would be like The Watchmen. Those are two pretty major ones. A third one that I'm super partial to, just because it's when I started reading comics for, as an adult, more like not adult, but as a young adult, I should say, was the storyline with where Batman gets his back broken. And it was sort of like that redemption arc of Batman. I kind of liked it, where he's like, he's crippled basically, and he has to rebuild himself. It was a very emotional kind of journey. I thought it was very interesting. So I liked those three. There's others that are also really great, but you said best, so those are the ones that kind of are in my mind. Are there any characters that you feel are underutilized or underappreciated? So generally, I was thinking about this one a little bit. Underutilized, underappreciated. Okay, here's my opinion on this. This is gonna be kind of different than your question, but kind of answers your question. So what I find happens is, like, Marvel or DC or whatever comic company will find, oh, we have this character. This character is really great. Harley Quinn, or the Batman Who Laughs, and they'll take this character and they will beat that character to death. Basically, they'll put him in every comic and everything you see. Oh, it's like, too much. And then after that, people get tired of that character, and then they don't use them anymore. So, for example, I actually like Batman Who Laughs. Very cool character, but you won't see him used as much as he was during his height. And I find that that is an annoying thing, and that happens a lot with characters where they just get overused and then nobody likes them anymore. Just sort of move on to the next thing. It happened with Venom as well. They kind of overdid Venom for a while. They overdid Carnage for a while. It's like it happens all the time. So any of the ones that are underutilized or underappreciated, it's usually for that reason, that they get overutilized and overappreciated, and then people get sick of them and they get underutilized and underappreciated until they kind of get brought back for some nostalgic reason. That's generally what I found. I hope that answers your question, but other than that, I can't really think of characters like that are underutilized. I find that it's kind of nice when they get to that point where they're kind of there but not overly played, if that makes any sense. So the next one is from JSS Brooklyn. Speaking of rust and staples, is it safe to store books in a safe without fear of rust? Is there a select way to store books in a safe effectively? I've heard some safes are inappropriate. Okay, so here's the deal with safes. If you have like a big safe, I don't know, it'd have to be pretty big, because to store comics in it, it would have to be a fairly big safe. What you need is one that has like very limited moisture inside. It's just like storing comics without a safe. You want to avoid moisture. You want to keep it sort of the right environment. And also you want to avoid light. Those are the two big things. Moisture and light, those are what kill comics. So if your safe basically prevents those two things from damaging the comics that are stored inside, generally the comics will be better off. Having your comics graded kind of helps with that fact, because as long as it's in the safe and they're graded, well, generally the slabs themselves will protect against the moisture part. I've seen actually slabs where they threw them in water and the book comes out dry after they crack it open. So, for the most part, the slabs do protect against moisture. Probably over time that might not be the case, but for the, for what we're doing, if we're trying to store it in the best way possible, generally, if you store it in a dryish place and with minimum light exposure, you're probably fine. So those are the things to watch out for, really. And it doesn't matter if it's in a safe or outside a safe or whatever. Those are what you're really, really concerned about. Next question comes from CJS Comics and Games. I know you show a lot of great Golden Age comics, but what percentage of all your comics do you think are less than $20? Do you ever simply just rummage through dollar bins at shops or shows? Well, I was trying to think about this one. In my mind, my comics are all worth $1 million each. I just think of, you have these really high expectations of your collection in a way. And but I do know that I have a lot of my comics from when I was a kid, my 90s collection, which represents about 5 long boxes of comics that are pretty much worthless. They're like dollar bin books. You got your X-Men ones, and you got your Turoks, and you got your Malibu comics, and you got your X-Forces and all that kind of stuff. I had all that stuff. And And even the ones that were like regular titles, like DC Zero, I had like the whole set of DC Zero. You know, all those comics, really not much value. So those are all under 20 bucks for the most part. There's a few keys that might be worth 20 bucks. But as I got older in the last, I'd say, since maybe 2015, if that makes sense, generally the types of comics I buy are fairly expensive, though I do buy runs. So what I'll do is, for example, Paper Girls, just as a random, that popped into my head. Maybe issues 1, 2, and 3 have some value, maybe above 20 bucks. But the rest of the series is like dollar bin books. Well, I have this whole series. So if you think about that, like the series, I think is like, I don't know, like 30 books. I don't know, something like that, 20, 30 bucks. So if you think about that percentage wise, you know, it's like small number of them are valuable and then the rest are dollar bin. And you get a lot like that. I have like the complete collection of Wonder Woman. Generally those books, actually the later ones in the series are less valuable, but the early ones are more valuable, obviously. But when you do collect runs, you get the run fillers, and that does represent a fairly big percentage of any comic series, right? So I would say the question becomes almost how much of any series is actually keys versus just dollar bin books or less than $20 books. So that's kind of the way the question kind of works out in a way. And that, because I'm a completist, so that kind of makes sense if you get my logic. So I would say like 90% of any collection becomes that way. That, you know, if you're a completist, that 90% of the books are going to be that under $20 range. Now, the remaining 10, you can kind of do, there's this rule called the 80-20 rule. And so I'm saying with 90%, but let's say it's 80-20. Generally, your most valuable things will be 20% of your collection, and then your least valuable will be 80% of your collection. But then you can do the same thing. If you took all that 80%, just threw it away, and then you have just that 20% of the most valuable books, then you can do another 80-20 rule, and you say, okay, of that 100% now of these top 20%, well, then 80% would be under $1,000, let's say, or under $500, or under $100, whatever number. So you'd say 80%. And if you take those away, then you got you got 20% that are above that, right? And then you keep on doing that and break it down, and then you would see like what percentage, from doing that weird math, would be like super valuable. So in my collection, based on all that kind of weirdness, I have about 3,000 Golden Age books. Now, not all of those books are valuable. A lot of them are like 30 or even less. Some are like several $1,000s and more. I'd say most of them are above that $100 mark. And, you know, again, that 80-20 rule kind of applies to how I would say the values in it. So hopefully with all that convoluted answer, you get that about 90% of my collection under 20 bucks. I have about 30,000 books, so the math kind of works out. And the rest would be anywhere from $20 to tens of thousands of dollars. So, but do I rummage through dollar bins? Yes, I do. And these books actually are kind of funny. I'm going to show you a bunch that I found through dollar bins. And sometimes dollar bins now are not dollar bins. Like it's like these books, it's like they say it's a dollar bin, but it's not a dollar bin because it's like anywhere from $20 and under. Just how your $20 question came out. Well, these were books that are all under 20 bucks that were pretty cool. So the first one is this one. I actually ended up getting this for free. This is Torrid Affairs. Got this for free. So this was just thrown in with something. I bought a bigger book. They threw this in for free. But a kind of a cool one. It's a dollar bin book, but it's a cool one. It has like Matt Baker art. So it's really cool for that. It's obviously reprints, but it has Matt Baker art. pretty cool. Another one that I picked up, and this is actually at the same show. You can see I paid $10 Canadian, and this is Alex Schomburg. So this was in a dollar bin-ish thing. Alex Schomburger. So I do dig through those dollar bins and find some kind of cool books. I mean, Alex Schomburg, great, phenomenal golden age artist, and to pick his stuff up for $10, I'll do that all day. The last one is I found this one, and it was $20. This one I've been searching for the longest time because I'm a big Casper the Ghost fan. I actually really like Casper the Ghost, and I like a lot of the cartoon comics because I grew up reading those when I was really young. This is the first appearance of Wendy the Good Witch, and just a cool book, you know, to get Wendy the Good Witch her first appearance for like $20. It's like a $300-400 book. It's like such a great steal. So my point is, I do search through those dollar bins, and I do, you know, I try to go in with armed knowledge of what to look for. I don't necessarily find every grail book that I'm looking for, but I do find some cool books in those dollar bin dives. And I think that's part of the fun of the hobby, actually, that we as collectors, we want to find that grail book in a dollar bin that's like, oh, Action 1 in a dollar bin. No, it's like that kind of experience is why we do this hobby. It's a fun thing. Last question is from Matt Likes Comics. Is there a character that you wish would come back? Okay, so I was thinking about this one as well because it's similar to the underutilized kind of idea, underappreciated. Are there characters that I wish would come back? And I was thinking about this in a really weird way. When I was a kid, I really liked Snoopy. I really loved Snoopy. I had like Snoopy dolls, like a whole bunch of these Snoopy dolls when I get like the Snoopy clothes to put on the Snoopy dolls. And I really got into the Smurfs as well. I was really into the Smurfs. So the point of that is they had comics for those characters. And, you know, Snoopy was one of those comics that is great. Also, Uncle Scrooge is another one. But I don't see those anymore. I don't, like, when you go to the comic store, do you see those kind of books? Not often. Sometimes. Now they're coming out with Darkwing Duck. That's good, you know. But they really don't come out with those Uncle Scrooges and Snoopies and Smurfs and all these kind of characters that appeal to kids. And those are the characters I'd really like to see come back. And there's a really strong reason for why I'd like to see those characters come back. I don't think comics appeal to kids. And I'm saying it like openly that comics do not appeal to kids. There's very little stuff for kids to read. Like there's just nothing that's really that geared towards kids and the innocence of kids. I kind of like to see that come back. So it's not one character that I would say, oh, I've got to bring this character back. No, I mean, I'd bring back Miss Mask, but, you know, or one of my golden age girls, you know, but what I'd really like to see is comics geared towards kids and to bring back that audience, not the characters, bring back the audience of young kids, get them back interested in comics so that they can grow up with comics just like the way I did. So that's what I'd like to see. And speaking of golden age characters that I was kind of alluding to there, I have a Kickstarter. And if you want to support my Kickstarter, you can. I put a link in the description of this video where I am selling my own comic. And it's really about me showcasing golden age girls that I think are cool. And I want to share my love for the golden age with other people, and I hope that I can kind of inspire people to kind of maybe start collecting golden age. And yeah, it's all about sharing the love, really. And if you want to support this channel, well, the best way is to get a comic in doing so. Like, just support the Kickstarter, and that supports the channel, because I buy too many expensive books and I have to pay the bills. So I'm just being silly, but it's true. I really do need the support with my Kickstarter, and I appreciate anything that people can do to support that Kickstarter. And finally, if you have a question for next week, put it in the comments below and I will answer it. I'll do my best. Like, I really do try to give full answers to all the questions that people provide. So I hope you enjoy that. I hope you enjoy these Wednesday videos. And thanks again for watching. Bye for now.